Is there any way you can turn it the other direction? The phone is not rotating.
Hang on just a second. I'm gonna, yeah, anyway, I think I figured.
That looks good. I can see it like that.
Does that work also?
The camera went off.
Oh, shit. Hold on. Here, I'm going to join again to try again because I can't get the camera back. Hang
Awesome.
on.
Okay.
Is it rotated now?
Perfection. It looks great.
It works? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Let me get this set up.
Awesome. And then you can just leave it on. And if Ashley and Jessica want to jump in, I'll keep you pinned on the screen unless they ask a question, and then I will play the director producer here.
Is that framing okay?
That looks great.
Okay. Got it. I'm gonna log in on my laptop too.
Good.
So that I can like also just kind of monitor the chat and stuff.
Okay. And if anyone can move closer to the screen and keep like a close look up on it when they put the Menti code, that would be helpful so that I can like.
I don't think there's not going to be a Menti code. It's all in person. Like they won't be doing the online stuff. So you'll have to have folks like submit their comments to the Redistricting 2022 at denvergov.org email address and CC our District 9 address.
Awesome. I can also ask them to put it in the chat, and then we can give the chat data to Emily.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks. I'm going to mute this while I kind of work on the laptop side of things.
Awesome.
Okay. Yes. No, she went to East. She went to East.
Starts at 5:30, right? 5:30. How are you, your brother Scott?
Yes. So hard like doing.
Was he was staying with
He
you?
was staying with us. You know, like they have a 4-year-old, and an 11-month-old.
And you're like out of that phase and a whole different phase. And
Well, I
so-
mean, their like lives are entirely circumscribed by like their nap routines.
That's how.
Yes.
I remember those days.
Yeah. And Ashley's coming here.
Yeah. She said she was coming back.
How's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Casey on her way?
She is actually traveling, so she's on Zoom at the moment and we're live streaming. So if you have any questions for Candy, you can ask them over Zoom. Hi. Oh, actually, yes, I wasn't on mute, so.
I have a question.
Hello.
Would either of you be
Yes.
able to stand at the front door? And
Sure.
help me go find
I'll
the books?
go,
Do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever
I'll
you-
man our laptops.
Okay, you got
Whatever you want to. Yes. Yeah,
This is a great system. I love it.
yeah. We had about on the RSVP one, there were about 26, but we also did a robocall for the whole, here, I'll mute this for the moment.
Wait just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Yeah, actually, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm assuming it's just something packets too, right? I think that's. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Trickling in, so we didn't even need 2 or 3 more minutes.
This was like an it's probably going to say
I was hoping.
Where am I?
That's north.
so. The first one, D took number 1, E took number 2, and A took number 1. Okay. D was yeah, D is.
Awesome. Okay, I think we're gonna get started if people are ready. We'll let people continue to trickle in, but I think I want to give everybody as much time as possible with the maps tonight. So this is awesome. Thank you so much for this big turnout. I think this is the last of 6 public meetings, so I think it's really important that you're all here to participate in this last meeting. I think I'm just going to jump in with a presentation and overview of the process, what tonight's going to look like, just to give you guys as much time as possible with the maps. So our purpose for tonight, as you're probably aware, is to offer our input on the proposed district maps and give our thoughts as to what we do like about them, what we could change about them, and why. And all of this in order to provide council with a range of community feedback and preferences as they'll be making their decision on March 29th. So a little bit about the process for tonight. If this is your first meeting of the 6 meetings, do you mind if I take off my mask while I present a little bit? Cool. So a little bit about the process. So I'm gonna run through a brief presentation about what redistricting is, why it's important, some key facts, and then we're going to spend the majority of the meeting sort of individually looking at the maps, providing our feedback on sticky notes. So across the side of this room, as you'll see, we have the 6 proposed council district maps, and there are sticky notes and pens for each. And then next to each of the maps, there are 2 chart papers. One asks you, what do you like about this map? And the one below that asks you what you would change about that map and why. So spend a little bit of time, that's sort of individual time, for about half an hour with each of the maps, giving some thought and writing them down for each of the maps. And then we'll come back. So don't leave. After you do that, come back and we'll have a little bit of a dialogue and discussion among all of us about that and sort of what drives our preferences, why we would prefer one map over the other, what's important to us in making this decision. And then finally, there's a written survey that you all can take a couple minutes to take and hand off on your way out. Any questions about the process for the meeting tonight? Yes, sir.
Can we still make comments after this meeting online or something instead of doing it tonight on stickies?
Oh, here, there's a chart paper over here with information. It looks like there's a redistricting email. There's a number to call. I don't see what's below that. It's the website and the website as well. If anything does come up and if you have an aha moment after the meeting, is there a deadline for when?
Hi, I'm Emily Lapel. I work for Denver City Council Central Staff. You can submit comments up until March 29th when we have to approve our final map. So if you have any aha moments or any thoughts? Write us a message. Our email address is there. If you don't want to email, you can send us a letter. Our office is there. You can call us. This is our website as well. Thank you.
Any other questions about the process? Yes.
I'm also considering all 6 maps, or have you write it down?
I believe at this time we're considering all 6 maps. With a nod from people. Yes.
So are the maps in order based on city council?
So, that's a good question. So actually, they're not by order in any preference. They're kind of arbitrarily named so that it's not, ranked in any way. But each map is sponsored by either one or multiple council members. So there's 6 maps, and they are sponsored by different council members. And on your handout, you should see sort of who the sponsors are for each of the maps and why there's sort of narrative about why they prefer those districts. Yes.
Hi, will it necessarily be one of the 6 that's chosen, or might there be tweaks, tinkering around the edges with some?
From what I understand and what I've heard from council members, there's opportunity to tweak and discussion. So after, I'll go through a little bit in my presentation about what the process will look like after this, but council members will deliberate on the feedback that's been received through this public process, and then they'll have a conversation about if and what needs to be tweaked by given that feedback. Yeah. Any other questions about what we're doing tonight? Awesome. Let's move on. So just some basic guidelines here for participation. There's quite a few of us here, so when we have a discussion, we break out. Just remember to remain respectful of each other, of council members, generally in this process. Just demonstrate courtesy and respect during the conversation. Providing productive ideas and feedback. So I think, as I mentioned, your feedback is going to be really critical for their decision. So making sure that your feedback provides them with input that will be able to help them in their decision making. Focusing on the task at hand. So just to note that while there's a lot of important issues happening in the city right now and a lot of things that feel related, tonight we're here to talk about redistricting and the 6 proposed maps. Actively listen, keeping an open mind, and refraining from interrupting. So during discussion, I understand people like it passionate, and that's totally fine and good and part of the process. Just remember to listen to each other. And then finally, help us stay on agenda. So we're slated to get out of here at 7. So just want to make sure that we stay on task and get all the feedback that we can. And I'll probably continue to come back to those throughout the meeting. So diving into the meat of everything. Awesome. So what is redistricting? So at a basic level, redistricting is the process of drawing the boundaries around districts in which public officials are elected. Effective redistricting accurately reflects the population changes and diversity and allows for equitable and fair representation. So every 10 years, after the new U.S. Census data is released, local governments must update their district boundaries to reflect the new population numbers. For Denver, these new district maps will be in effect for the April 2023 election and will be applicable for the next 3 municipal cycles, which I think is pretty significant as other redistricting processes have not reflected 3 cycles. There are several rules for this redistricting process that I think will be important to keep in mind as you start looking at the maps. The first is that Denver must be divided into 11 districts, so no more or fewer than 11. Each district should have a relatively equal population. So for this round of redistricting, the goal for each district is around 65,000 residents per district. And then lines should be drawn to encourage geographic compactness rather than being dispersed. And then the districts must be geographically contiguous, meaning that each council district should share a common border with the next. And finally, districts should be comprised of whole election precincts. So why is redistricting important? So I can't overstate enough how important it is for these to be effective for the next 3 municipal cycles. So when you're thinking about which maps you prefer and why, I think it's really important to be thinking long-term. Redistricting at every level is important because as populations grow, they often don't do so equally. So some grow faster or differently than others. So reconfigure district lines to make sure that they align with the population changes. Make sure that communities have equal access to representation. Redistricting dictates who will be elected and how those officials will advocate for their community and respond to the needs. We'll be talking more about communities of interest, but again, these districts should ideally represent any concentrated populations where there are common social and economic interests that should be contained within a single district for effective and fair representation. How has Denver changed? So this map, and it's a little bit hard to read, so I'll help and read a little bit. They visually show how Denver's population has shifted over the last 10 years of the last 10 years of the process.
Our interpreters here, so if you are in need of translation services in this package, you can get that in the back. We will help you getting set up for them to make it.
Can you point her up?
So you can stay at the beginning.
In the way. So if you didn't hear that, if you see our need a Spanish interpretation, Estella in the back can help with that. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. So how has Denver changed? So as you can see in the legend, that it's a little bit hard to read. So I'll read. Some districts have drastically grown in population size. So for example, District 8. District 8 has grown by nearly 21,000 people. Other districts have seen comparatively lower growth rates. So District 3, for example, has grown by about 900 people. So this slide shows the population change, which districts have seen stable growth, which have seen a slight gain, which have seen a moderate gain, which have seen a major gain. So as you can see, districts 2, 3 have seen gains of fewer than 1,800 people. Districts 5, 6, and 7 have seen gains between 1,801 and 8,000. Districts 1, 4, and 10 have seen gains between 8,001 and 13,000. And districts 8, 9, and 11 have seen gains of more than 13,000. Next slide. So it's also critically important to consider the racial plurality. So redistricting impacts how diverse communities are represented in their legislative bodies. For example, redistricting can ensure that communities of color have fair opportunity to elect candidates who represent their interests and will advocate for them. Next slide. So over the last 70 years, Denver's districts have drastically shifted. So in 1950s, as you can see, Denver's population was about 416,000. And at this time, it's important to note that there were only 9 districts. In the 1960s, the population grew, so the number of people in each council district also grew. In the 1970s, Denver added 2 districts to get to the 11 that we have now. In the 1980s, the population decreased a bit, so obviously the number of people in each district also decreased. By the 1990s, the population decreased again by about 25,000 people. In the 2000s, the population increased significantly, so the proportionate of the number of people also increased, so change is about 19%. By 2010, the population was at 600,158. And that brings us to today. Denver's population has grown by about 20% in the last 10 years, so we're now at 715,522 residents. The goal, as I said, is to split that evenly, so at about 65,000 people per district. So a little bit about this process. As I mentioned, Denver City Council is required to redraw its boundaries every 10 years. So a small working group of council members has convened since the fall of 2020 to draft an outreach plan and the methodology for redistricting. The chair of that council working group also met one-on-one with each council member to discuss district boundaries and resolution content. And then in total, 22 maps were submitted, including maps that were submitted by members of the public and maps submitted by council. Council council decided they wanted to evaluate a total of 13 maps during these community meetings, and they then weighed all the various maps that were submitted, including community maps and their maps, and came up with the 6 that you'll be discussing today. So after these meetings, my team, I forgot to introduce myself, I apologize. My name is Sam, and I work for a communications firm called GBSM. So I'm not a city employee, I'm not an independent consultant that was hired to help just facilitate these meetings. So sit on my team, and I will compile a report that summarizes the feedback that we received during these meetings and submit that to council to help them make their decision. Awesome. So in terms of community engagement, engagement has occurred in 3 phases. Before the census data was released, the city collected public input through a tool called Representable, where people could identify communities of interest, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. During the second phase, the public was given the opportunity to review the census data. And now we're in the third phase, in which community members have drawn and submitted their own maps through the Maptitude software. Council members have reviewed those maps and the maps that they would like to, and then also developed their own and gone through a deliberative process to come up with the maps that they submitted tonight. And so that brings us to tonight. One step in the public input process to date was through the Representable Tool, which was created originally as an anti-gerrymandering tool in which community members are encouraged to submit their own areas that they consider communities of interest. And that's defined as people who share common social and economic interests and who benefit from remaining within a single district. Communities of interest are often used to help identify areas where there are prominent social identities. For example, they can be used to identify a Latinx community or another different type of social identity community. People were given the opportunity to map communities of interest, and this was the data that was received, as you can see. Just because the map here doesn't necessarily show communities of interest you might have in your mind, in every area of the city doesn't mean that they don't exist. It just means that community member did submit one to that area. So I think it is also important here to define gerrymandering. So gerrymandering is the practice of drawing district lines in a way that favors one group. It allows politicians to choose voters instead of voters to the politicians. So minority groups have disproportionately suffered from the manipulation of district line from gerrymandering. And if you want more information, there's a lot of information on the website, the districting website focused on gerrymandering. And as a note, the Communities of Interest report is also on the city website, so you can do more of the input there. So in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, your input will be submitted to council in a comprehensive report that our team will create. And I did also want to note that actually it probably won't be after this meeting, but throughout this process, I have presented during council's redistricting committee meetings every Monday and presented the information that we received in the last community meeting. So sort of accumulatively have been providing council with their input. And then just note the final approval of the map will be on March 29th. So mark your calendars, it's a public hearing in which the final map is first. All right, so time check. It is 5:55, so let's spend about 25 minutes with the maps. And I just ask that you be a little patient with each other, as I understand it'll be a little bit of a cluster over there for a little bit. But there are council members present, and I believe Councilwoman Sabaka is also here to help answer any technical questions that you all have. Yes, to Councilmember wanted to introduce himself, and we'll open for questions. And then we also have Councilwoman Sabaka online, I believe.
Yes, she's on Zoom. My name is Liz. I'm one of the council aides for District 9. And so when people have questions for Councilwoman Sabaka during the Q&A session, you can come up to the laptop here contact on Zoom. She was she's traveling and wasn't able to make the meeting today.
And I'll
But she
also-
is present on Zoom.
If she is willing, I think during the breakout, it's a good time to come and ask her questions individually, just because people will sort of be
Yeah.
wondering if people have questions for her.
So yes, just come find me over here and she's right on the computer.
I was told there was not a Zoom option.
There is not a Zoom option, just Councilman Baca is joining virtually because she's traveling.
She can talk about what I
I understand, just the only way to provide feedback during this meeting is to provide it on the maps. Yes, sir.
Before we get started, could you go through the maps and tell us who sponsors which one?
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't identify the person.
Put it out the sponsors and the narrative, so you didn't take them up yet. Sorry about that.
So just to note, it looks like a couple people are writing on the chart paper, and just for continuity of making sure that we capture everything, if you could write on the sticky notes, and then stick the sticky notes, there's a little bit of a nuance, but stick the sticky notes on the chart paper. We can then collect that after this demonstration. Thank you. Any other questions about what we're doing? Yes. Anybody here speak to what Sure. Do you mind, sorry, would you mind introducing yourself with your district? Or if you're a large?
Sure. I'm Kendra Black. I represent District 4, which is far southeast Denver. I'm Kathy Sandoval, which is Council District 1 in Northside.
Don't worry, I represent District 11, it's a portion of Montello, I-20, Marshall, and Email.
Councilman Herman, District 8, we're gonna put these up on the map, so if you wanna, if you wanna write down the name, I'm gonna list them off right now. So map A is sponsored by Councilwoman Baca. Map A is sponsored by Councilwoman Baca. Map B, as a boy, Councilwoman Jamie Torres. Map B, Councilwoman Jamie Torres. Map C, Councilman Kevin Flynn. Map C, Councilman Kevin Flynn. Map D, as a dog, Councilmember Clark, Herndon, Castman, Hines, Gilmore, and Black. Map E, Councilmember Clark, Herndon, Castman, Hines, Gilmore, and Black. Map E, D is Clark, Herndon, Castman, Hines, Gilmore, and Black. Map E as Echo, Councilwoman Sandoval. Map F, Councilwoman Sawyer. We'll not go back to that until the next year.
Para las personas que quieran poder el tipo de interpretación en la parte de
Okay, so we are gonna break now for about 25 minutes and provide our feedback on the maps, and then we'll come back for discussion. Any other last minute questions?
He has a question, Joe.
Me too. Hi, would you like to speak to me or to Councilwoman Zulabaca?
I would like to get a meeting,
Oh,
the
okay.
council lady, one.
Yes. And what issue would you like to talk about?
Well, I can see the happy, but I want to talk to her about our neighbors.
Okay. And which neighborhood are you in?
Swansea.
Okay, absolutely. Why don't you can let Councilwoman?
Hi.
Hi, she can talk to.
I might try to talk to her alone person
Yes,
first.
absolutely. And what is your phone number so we can follow up?
303.
303?
503.
Okay. I'm going to put this on mute though at the moment, just so that you're not live streaming.
It's really nice to see you. We miss you.
Good to see you too. I wish they would have let everybody participate online so we could all have a conversation. They didn't even give you guys my video introduction, but you guys know I love you, and I put that video together so I can so you guys can go deeper on the dive with the map that I made. So support map A.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. And I may try live streaming the comment section, but
Awesome.
I know from last time the audio was so bad. So hopefully you're able to hear it.
You know what? If you give Liz your phone number, I'll text you the link for this Zoom. That way you can be a participant on the Zoom. That way you can go around and you can get close-ups with your camera if you want to. It's up to you.
Okay. All
right.
Drill call. Okay. Oh my gosh,
Awesome.
I'm on YouTube. Sorry, I just saw this is live. Yeah. Sorry. But okay.
You're all good. All right.
you.
Bye.
Hello, Councilwoman.
How are you?
I am well. How are you?
You are live with me on YouTube. Good to see you.
Thanks for
Support
attending.
Map A and tell everybody else support Map A.
I wanted to ask you about Map A because I live about 3/4 of a mile from here. I live in 5 Points and Curtis, I guess you'd call it Curtis Park on the edge as well. I'm looking at my map here. Oh, pardon me. I wanted to ask about, so it's kind of this portion there.
Yep.
That little rectangle that it's basically Park to Broadway, Larimer, 27th to Stout. I wonder if you could speak to the choice to divide up Curtis Park, and it's just, a little context that obviously but just it being one of the oldest neighborhoods, one of the most, historically, culturally important and diverse neighborhoods. I just wanting to learn more about, I did listen to your YouTube, which I appreciate you posting. And unless I missed it though, didn't get into very specific, and that's understandable. You can't speak to every zigzag in the whole map. But about that, I would be concerned about dividing Curtis Park, given that it is what we feel is a good cohesive kind of neighborhood. So I'm sorry, I'm off camera here.
Yeah, no, you're good. So I think that what people need to understand about the maps is that we were able to draw them based upon the whole precincts that were created by the clerk and recorder. And so that's like the smallest unit of division that we could use when we were drawing the lines. So that made it really complicated sometimes to keep our neighborhoods together. But when we applied all of the communities of interest, including taking into consideration the census tract changes with racial, ethnic, and poverty data, we cut those lines based on those things. And so what a line for city council means is that, you would have a neighborhood that would have 2 representatives. And that would mean that you guys would treat them kind of like you treat your at-large council members. You would be going to both of them, or on your side, you would go to your council member, but it wouldn't necessarily impact the function of the neighborhood. What are some of the things that you've come to city council for in the past?
This is actually my first time attending an event, if you will. So,
well, thank you for that. That's exciting. Well, I think that the important thing to recognize is that your lived experience, you'll never notice that your neighborhood is broken up, that you have a line between the neighborhoods. What you might notice is that you would have to go to both of your council members if you wanted different perspectives on both sides of the line. You would have 2 council members that you might want to invite to your meetings when you have an R&O meeting for the neighborhood. So that's kind of how it would translate to the lived experience of the resident. Okay. But other than that, it wouldn't necessarily impact your lived experience at all because it doesn't break up the statistical neighborhood on any other map.
I see. I'm going to step aside so that others can speak, but thank you for talking with me here.
One of the things that I should also point out for R&Os, for example, the Curtis Park R&O would be able to access the support of 2 city council budgets.
That's interesting. I'll just, I want to digest this. I'll admit I'm still viscerally have a tough time with breaking up 5 points into 3 different, but I need to dwell on what you just said. And so I appreciate you talking it through with me. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I think if you care about the diversity of the neighborhood, especially the status as a historically Black neighborhood, it'll help you understand what I'm trying to do with preserving a majority minority seat for District 9. District 9 has historically been a majority minority seat. Right, and with our demographic changes, if we don't break off from the South, then we have to break off at the north side of the map. And the north side of the map cuts off our ability to maintain a majority minority seat.
I see. Well, and that's absolutely a value that should be honored. And, I appreciate you keeping that in mind. I'm still struggling with that one kind of trapezoid, because it is right in the heart of what you're talking about, and it seems counterintuitive to me, but I understand. I'm hearing you, and I respect you for talking with me here, and I appreciate it. So, and that's I'm only talking about where I am because that's what I know. I can't speak to everything else, and so I know that this was complicated. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Okay, appreciate it. Safe travels. Be well.
Take care. Hi, you're live. Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Yes, I wouldn't put a second. I was like, I think your map preserves Montbello more than the rest, and just trying to keep it a larger chunk of itself. So that was my like comment to that one. But I'm just here to see where.
Thank you. Thank you. Make sure you spread the word if there are comments that come up. It's a controversial split, but I promise you, I worked every single angle I possibly could to keep Montbello together.
Yeah.
And we simply couldn't make it happen because of the size requirements and because of where Councilwoman Gilmore lives in the middle of it. It was violating too many rules to be able to keep Montbello whole. But I did take East Colfax into that district so that Montbello did not remain isolated as a minority community.
Yeah, well, because I had a question. Like at this point, there's like no more redrawing the maps. Like these are the maps that are submitted, and these are the maps that we have to choose, huh?
So this is complicated because you should talk to Councilwoman Sandoval and ask her about that, because I've been asking the same question about whether or not we're going to be able to change and update and get people involved in the updates, or if we're going to work together to consolidate based on input. And I have not been given a straight answer on that. So it would be great for you to talk to Councilwoman Sandoval tonight before you leave and ask how the next steps of this process will work and how they are going to assure you all that community input truly is factored into the final map.
Sorry, I'm just gonna go find them now.
Thank you.
See you, love.
Take care.
Hey.
Hello. You're live on YouTube
Live.
right now.
Huh?
You're live on YouTube. What questions do you guys have?
I know, I didn't realize this was live. Why are you live? That's
to make this accessible to our community as far and wide as possible, since the committee did not.
Accessible though, like this lady literally started the meeting without introduction and she didn't even explain the damn maps. And I was like, I haven't did my homework. I've been parenting. I don't know what the fuck's going on with these maps. And she gave us 25 minutes to go ahead and put our input based off the maps that we don't even know. Should I have came and did my homework beforehand somehow? Like, was it the whole point of this meeting was to be able to give us what the fuck the maps are about? And
yes.
Here, like, where's the feedback on the facilitation? I was like, I got feedback for the facilitation. I can't even get feedback to the maps.
So you are hitting on all of the issues I have raised multiple times. The redistricting committee has been chaired by Councilwoman Sandoval. We were only asked where we would prefer to have this meeting located, and we were not involved in this process. We've asked to have it virtual several times and to give people a deeper dive on each map and give a justification for each of the maps, and have been unable to do that. If you have a chance, I created my own separate Zoom going into my map and why we created the map the way that we did, and showing you the layers, the census tract layers that we took into consideration around poverty, around third grade reading levels, around all kinds of things that would basically create districts that would want to fight together for a particular thing. And so that is available on our social media pages, and it's the deepest dive you're going to get on any of these maps. One of the things that you should do while you're there tonight is talk to the other council members, talk to Councilwoman Sandoval and ask her how community feedback is going to be incorporated and what you can expect for the next steps, and talk to her and the other council members about how they created their maps and what they prioritized when they created their maps. That'll help you decide. And I think they're going to let you guys vote on a map, but map A is the one that I created. And we call that the equity map, because that map is one of the only ones that actually took into consideration the race and ethnicities in the census tracts and the population changes. And our priority was preserving a majority minority seat, where the other maps get rid of that. map D is the map that's supported by 6 other council members. And so all they need is 7 votes for that to be adopted as the map. And so I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion that that map will be chosen, but that's a question you should ask those council members tonight.
Is what, that this is already, did they already secure their votes for this map?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid question. There are 6 council members sponsoring map D.
Yeah,
And
I have
so,
a couple of them here, a few of them here.
yeah. Sandoval has her own map, and Torres has her own map, and Sawyer has her own map, and Flynn has his own map. And then the other map, map D, is the one that the rest of them support. Gilmore and Herndon and Black all support map D.
Yeah. Damn. I feel like this is a whole sham walking in here unprepared, I guess, as I am.
I totally hear you. I totally hear you.
I mean, I'm just trying to parent and be good at my job. And I'm like, I fairly am knowledgeable, but I'm walking in here like, I'm like, and I'm very political. I know systems, I know structures, and I feel like, what the fuck? Yet alone anybody else. Well, with two guys,
Marisol,
huh?
Marisol, what are you thinking about the process?
It's my first time in one of these meetings, so I don't know. I need to get an update from Vanessa and see what she keeps me. I need to touch with her and see when we can sit down and talk about it, because I didn't even know we were going through this process.
One of the things that I could do, if you guys want to sign, well, or let Liz know and let other people there know, because they wouldn't let me give an announcement or anything, because technically this is not a virtual meeting. So my staff is doing this independently, but otherwise I would have announced that if people want an extra workshop where I can like walk you guys through and like take you deeper, that's what we can do between now and when they vote mid-March.
I'm gonna get this. I brought a notebook and some paper.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. But what I need you guys to do is ask them if they're actually going to change any of the maps. Otherwise, we're just meeting for fun.
Right. Is feedback actually going to be, community feedback actually going to mean in edited maps? That's my other question. Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Candy, now I have you online. So I was just talking to
you're live. So whatever you ask, make sure that you're okay with it being live.
Okay, no, I'm fine with it. 35th in Marion, the 40th in Marion, we've been having people speeding. There was 2 cars that got hit 2 times already in the same spot. And we need stop signs up there because there's kids around there. There's a little school in the corner. And
we are begging the mayor for that. We've been begging the mayor since they made that realignment.
So and you can mayors, if we call it mayor, because this is ridiculous that this has been going on for about 2 years, 3 years already with the 2 ways. So we need to get on it because this is just too much already. It's the same family that got hit 2 times already.
I will make sure that we let them know that this video is here so they can see it too. But we've talked to Jason Gallardo in the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure about this multiple times. And we just keep being put on the back burner, but we'll keep fighting for that one. You know, Lisa lives down there.
It's just, we need more support, you know? So, okay.
Thank you.
Good? All right, well, if anything, I'll keep in touch with Vanessa and we'll talk on Facebook later on.
Okay, if they answer and they say that community feedback will be integrated, just be prepared and ready because we will have a workshop that we can go deeper on and go through all the maps.
I'm down.
All right, thank you guys for coming.
Oh yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Is there a line?
Come on over. We can listen together. Hello, my darling. How are you?
Hi. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. You guys are live. So whatever you say, just letting you know you're live.
Okay.
Okay.
I had a quick question for you, Missy. Okay,
Yes.
baby, it was good talking to you. Tell me your thought process on map A with the division between 8 and 11 and kind of breaking up Montbello area.
Awesome. Well, before you leave, make sure that Liz gets your email address if we don't already have it, because I made a 45-minute Zoom video with visuals showing the exact thought process. The main thing that I was trying to do was account for the gentrification that has happened across our city. So what I did was I took the census tract data to show me where we have our Black and Brown voting population, our population living in poverty. I considered probably over 15 to 20 different maps that showed me different things about our neighborhoods, everything from internet to food deserts. And so what I did was I drew districts that gave a voice to the most marginalized voices in those districts. And so what we know with the Black and Brown population is that it's slowly moving more northeastward. And we have lost a substantial population of Black and Brown people in our District 9. And so all of the other maps are proposing to convert District 9 to a majority white district. And that would, so what that would do is we would lose an actual seat on city council. And so we would have 7 majority white city council seats, where in District 8, the population in Stapleton or Central Park is diluting the Black voice already and will be diluting the Black voice anyway. That's why I tried to loop in East Colfax to make sure that we were trying to keep as much of a presence of Black and Brown votes in each district so that we weren't cracking, packing, or stacking, which are tactics of gerrymandering. It's diluting, overpowering, or breaking up the Black and Brown voice. And so those were 2 of my top considerations to meet the criteria about the Voting Rights Act.
That's helpful. You know,
Yes.
I live in Green Valley Ranch. And
oh, yeah.
This concern is, I'm sure you remember this, back when Montbello was first carved up. And then the next thing you know is you had our schools basically decimated. And so my greatest concern is I want to make sure that we don't lose the connection between Green Valley Ranch and Montbello, because I think that a lot of the gentrification that happened is starting to happen in Green Valley Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
So
big
that's
time.
what I wanted, my darling. Thank you so much.
And
appreciate it.
Don't forget to leave your email address so we could send you that full video, because the visuals will blow your mind.
Thank you. Be safe getting home.
Thank you. Take care.
My lovely. It's good to see you. I'm gonna throw my mask again because I've been running around.
Hi. Thank you so much for
call.
coming.
I'm gonna give you a call tomorrow, okay?
Please do. If you haven't seen the video that I made explaining my map, leave your email address with Liz so that we can get you the video. It's 45 minutes and it goes in depth with census tract layers that we took into consideration to make map A.
Okay, great. We'll talk tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
As I mentioned, this meeting is till 7, so I tried to leave about half an hour for that portion of the meeting. And we'll keep these maps up here if after the meeting you're not finished, if you want to take a couple minutes for the back of the meeting. For the dialogue discussion, I wanted to ask you if you have any unanswered questions from the kind of maps or any questions about the process.
So was there any maps that came off off of or through the process.
Oh. So the question, I'm gonna repeat it back, that's okay. The question was, are any of these maps, maps that were submitted by community members, or are they all just council maps? Does any council member wanna answer that question? I'll speak from what I've heard in the process, and I believe that they talked and they deliberated and came up with that based off of a lot of the community maps they received, as well as the community's interest in some of the other data that was received. So it might not be a specific map, but a lot of their maps integrate some of the feedback that was received. But I will let another councilor answer that as well. That's correct.
My map I based on something else. My map, I only represent one. So I share the borders with the map become three. And I got mean for a while, and so I do my map based on the maps that I was seeing during January and based on comments that I was seeing from the people I met.
Yes, sir.
I don't see the council district at large as sponsors, but will they have a vote? And do they, are they giving these to the opinion or? Yeah, not every council member had to sponsor a map, but when we make the decision next month, every council member will vote on it in our committee of the whole, as well as March 29th, before it's published.
Yes, sir.
So I had a question in a conversation with Councilman Sandoval about the process to integrate any of these comments into map consideration, and is there going to be a time where the public gets to see like these considerations reflected in maps that are not these ones, or are these fixed and like these are just the maps we get to choose from?
Right. I believe someone asked a similar question, but I'll see if I can sort of reframe the answer in that I believe. So we'll submit our report that our consulting team is creating based off of all the feedback that we've received over the last 6 meetings. That feedback will be submitted to council, and there will be a deliberative process in which they discuss the maps and determine whether they want to change any of them or update or whatever it looks like. That answer? Okay.
I'm just curious, why don't the voters get to decide which maps? Why is it go to city council? I think the voters, we live in the district, why don't we get to vote?
So this process is in our charter that city council is responsible for. But
we need to change the charter.
That's right. As an opportunity, if people want to have questions about changing the charter, I don't want to discuss it now because we're going to do it off, but you can speak with any council member and we can walk you through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I'm confused. Who oversees this process if you're unsure who actually gets to determine whether or not community feedback actually gets to translate into edited maps? Because that's pretty much my question too. Are we just here for dog and pony show? Are we just here for tokenism of community comment, or are these going to be actually edited maps with our feedback? Because if not, we're just wasting our time. Right. And I just want to know who's in charge of this process. Maybe we could ask that person.
So,
if they want to,
so I'm the vice chair and Councilman Sandoval, the chair of government. The reason why we say, because this has been asked before, the reason why I say maybe is because we haven't seen the comments yet. So to say I'm going to make a change when we haven't had the opportunity to get the feedback yet would be disingenuous. But we're meeting, we get the report on March the 4th. So that's when we as council are going to report. Our first meeting as a committee of the whole is going to be March the 7th.
When do you vote?
So we have to move a map out of that committee of the whole by March 14th. And then we're going to have the public hearing March 29th. So that committee of the whole, you'll have the opportunity to watch. Now be our first opportunity to speak publicly. Because right now, all we're doing is listening to get your feedback.
So we won't have a response to our comments that you take and then possibly make changes to and then present it to us. Because if you have it back, you have to make a vote by the 7th and then like in your committee. And then go and vote on in the meeting by the 14th or 15th. That gives no second round of, like that's just. So what happened was.
So one-way communication.
So hold on, I'm gonna just remind the grounders, so if you're asking questions, let's wait to hear the answer.
So President 45 and Saturday. I was told that charter, once President 45. COVID. It set the whole entire chain reaction for us to have a faster process. Because according to our charter, which is our constitution, if we can have that discussion, but if I can finish. So according to what is set our government right now, the state process has to move forward, and the state did that. And then our clerk and recorder has to reset precinct to boundaries, and they need to start a process. And in between all of this setback, the voters in November voted to change the municipal election from May to April, which gave us one less month. So when we were planning this, we always assumed we would have 4 months. Unbeknownst to me, that the clerk and recorder was going to make a recommendation to change the charter, to change the election for April. And if anybody wants to run for city council, you have to live in the council district for 1 year before you can run. And so we felt as a small working group, it was important to finish this process before the first Tuesday of April in 2022, so people can have the opportunity to run for city council for the April 2023 election. And I don't like it. I don't. As the chair of the process, I don't feel comfortable with this time frame. I'm just upset with you. I don't like it. We have dealt with it, but I am trying to turn lemons into a process and make lemonade. I don't like that we have a pandemic. I don't like that we have to be virtual. I don't like that our communities of color are dying, but we're doing the best that we can with the very limited resources we have.
So I'm gonna ask that we keep it to questions, but I would love to have a discussion about what drives you in making these decisions, a little bit more map centered, but I understand that there are questions about process, so let's just spend a couple more minutes on that. So yes, sir.
Yeah, looking at the maps and which ones have already been sponsored by council members. Right now, we, I believe, have the most support. What processes have been put in place to make sure that these maps are for protecting the communities, for making sure the districts are represented, rather than making sure the council members keep their seats? As we just said, it's kind of like it's tricky. So how do we know the council members are not drawing the map to keep their seats instead of representing people?
I think and I will take my map on communities of interest, and that's the first time that we've had a process to work on communities of interest and actually gone to the community and asked them what they think there is to identify a community of interest. And then I was following the charter recommendations, which are our rules about being compact. I was area that I represent. I don't know these people that very well because I don't represent them, but I have met with them during this process because they send me a letter. So I reached out to them to be proactive and incorporate their feedback. So I am not fixed on one map. I am open to the public process, and that's why I'm here. But I am one vote in the process. If any other of my colleagues want to speak, they can go ahead.
I'll just add, in addition to the criteria you mentioned about being compact, they have to be about 65,000 people. Each one needs to be about 65,000 people. And so if you move one little line, you change the population and it has to be adjusted one way or another. It's a ripple effect. And so there really is no perfect map. And so I would say each of these could be considered a graph. And like we said, we are here to listen to you and hear what you care about. And we will take that into consideration when we discuss it amongst ourselves in a public meeting that you are welcome to watch or come and sit with you.
I have two more questions and then I want to make sure that we get to discussion. So yes, ma'am.
I have a process question on follow-up. If in fact we were interested in changing the charter, given the timeline that has been discussed here, is there any way that changing that charter would impact this selection process right now?
So it's for the state, how they did their, that was done in 2018. So that vote was a constitutional change, and both people throughout the state of Colorado in preparation for the census of the 2020.
Thank you. I think that's important for people to know, because to your question and to your point, even if we were to engage in the process of changing the charter, it will not be in time to stop what will be a decades-long impact right here. Thank you.
Yes, oh, you wanna go first? Yes.
You have a question?
I would have to.
Okay, you put your hand up as well. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So to your statement about not knowing districts and that you do not represent, what CAD or what program did you use? So like, in drafting and declaring there is, when we redistrict, bottom line, we want to make it equal in voting, equal in socioeconomics, spread out, so that monies go to where they need to go, representation is fair. I mean, I agree that that's what a lot of people really are striving for. So what program did you guys use? And if you don't know the districts, how are you, because I would love to sit in front of, I scoured through the online link that you gave us, and for future use, it would be helpful if we could actually, because I know you have all of the numbers, all of the information, all of the voting history, all of the minority status, all the growth, all of the building permits that you have in those districts areas that are going to make a difference in the next 10 years. So for me, how were you two involved with those numbers, but and comprising what is now and what is scheduled to be, and what the history of past voting records were, the delineations of political parties, and now with the increase in more of the gentrification down here in our areas, with the price increases of housing, how that's going to determine, who's actually living in our districts versus, the people that are still in moderately priced homes, which I can't believe I'm seeing are $400,000 to $500,000. All of that is important. I did not see that in any of your representations, in your explanations of your lines and your history and your work that you did with it. All I'm hearing is the criteria is very meager. But I know, thank you for saying all that. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to interrupt you. We have a software that is on the website. It's available to the public. You can draw your own map, and you can get every single one of those layers.
Well, a lot of people did draw their own maps, and I mean, it's the point of East Colfax. So let's take that. East Colfax ranked 78 out of 70 on the equity ranking for Denver. And 3 of these 6 maps put it in with Cherry Creek. So to me, there's a disconnect. Also, fine, you don't know East Colfax, you don't know all the neighborhoods, but these communities have gotten commitments from Denver over years. Comprehensive 2040 plan, Denver blueprint, hey, East Colfax, we know you're a food desert, we're gonna fix it. Hey, all of Denver, you're gonna make a commitment to you, our people, to build into our policies diversity and protecting these communities that are displacement. 3 of 6 maps kind of discount that, and to your point in the narrative, it's not mentioned.
You can go online. One of the things that we did before anyone drew a map, we used that tool that was mentioned earlier, Representable, for a community to create communities of interest. So I can speak to District 8, for example. 2 community of interest that kept popping up for my district was at Northeast Parkville State Board. Okay? Another one was at East Colfax State Board. So that's just one tool. And so as I'm trying to decide which map I support, that's what I look into. But we all are happy, and we want to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts on this map. But the charter why I spoke, why President Fillmore, we're happy to have those conversations on the side, but we really want to take the rest of this time for you all to weigh in on this, on your position.
One thing that, to your point, what we did do, we started meeting with Dr. Theobald from UCCS, who's an expert in gerrymandering, and an Dr. Theobald, and if you go to the website, it's her information that is sourced in academia on our website. So we met with her in workshops. She's actually going to use Denver as a model because we have built these during that time when we were waiting for the U.S. Census to state process. No other municipality went out and used Representable.org, which is the anti-gerrymandering tool, to figure out their process. No other municipality in Colorado is doing that right now. And that is because I, as the chair, always am going to look to academia because it's neutral and it's based in research. And so Dr. Theobald has helped us lead our process because I wanted to make sure that we were having reflective representation as much as possible baked into this process.
Okay, so I understand there's probably more questions, but I want to sort of shift to discussion, and I think we're already sort of getting in some of that, the meat of that, which is my big question really is what's driving you to favor one map over the other? What's important to you in this process? And I'm already hearing a lot of that in your questions and in your discussion. So if we can sort of shift our discussion to that sort of topic and that frame, I think so. These are the questions that I have. What's driving you to favor one map over the other? What concerns you about any of these maps? And I'm hearing that as well in a lot of your comments. And what are the absolute musts for you in these map decisions? So you might have been through a while.
Yeah, so I'll definitely answer your question. So first and foremost, everybody should understand elections have consequences, and when you get voted in right before a census tract, you get to make the decision. So instead of attacking the council people, they're the ones who get to choose. Unfortunately, they get all the power to do that. So I'll just say that. Secondly, I will say that what is driving me is making sure that neighborhoods stay whole, and communities stay whole, and there's continuity of elections. So over the last decade, the minorities in Denver have used the Northwest strategy to get more folks elected, and some of the maps that have been presented actually will break that. And I believe that one of the maps in particular is racial gerrymandering, and I'm very concerned about that. That's map A. Map A is completely ridiculous. First and foremost, you can see there are skinny districts and there are jagged lines. And with the council member's own testimony in her video that she released yesterday, she intentionally tried to take Latino vote from District 1 and Black vote from District 8. That is called packing. She can say that she does not pack, but she's packing. She also cracked the vote because the Black vote of North Park Hill is the only census tract. Only 2 census tracts that have prevailing to the Black vote. You can do this research yourself. There's a policy map, there's social explorer, so you can see the prevalence of those votes. You can also trust my word. I'm a mayoral appointee in transparency, and I am a master's student at the University of San Francisco studying public policy. So I'll say that I would urge all the other council members to not do anything close to map A, and I also think, map F is also in that same kind of thinking, and I don't necessarily appreciate that map either. I think map E is something that I like the most because it's more related to the maps that we've had previously. It keeps most of the neighborhoods whole. And I think it's going to be better for Black people and Latino people going forward. I would also know that there's a lot of folks that organized today who are in District 9, particularly because this is the District 9 meeting, and we're in District 9. And just a show of hand of how many people in District 9 support map E. These are people who live in District 9, and these are people who are here today to get our perspective on everything around the district. So last thing for me personally, like I said, I would love to see Park Hill completely, North Park Hill and Northeast Park Hill together, and within a map. And I would hopefully like to see, and I know it's difficult, it's been explained that Montbello is one of the main areas in all the maps that has a jagged line through it and is not whole. And so if there's any way that you all can address that within the final map, I would appreciate
I live in the middle of Montbello, and Montbello was split in the last redistricting. So there was no new split of Montbello. And right away, when we got the software, first thing I did was take the cursor from Piccadilly Road all the way to Peoria and see if there was any way possible that we could bring Green Valley Ranch, High Point, Parkfield, and Montbello communities up to Peoria, because that's really where people, if you live out there in Peoria to really Kenya is where people think of Montbello. And so pulled it from Piccadilly to Peoria, and that's 81,000 people. So there's no way when you look at the maps and the map to pull Montbello back together. And so on a variety of the maps, but for District 11 specifically, tried to make the least amount of changes to District 11 to keep the community together as much as possible. And it's a tiny little sliver up in one corner that due to Clerk Lopez and how he do the precinct at Boulder in Montbello, that precinct is in the industrial portion of the community. And so that I just wanted to share a little bit about that, because sometimes there's the misconception that somehow we could draw that line and abide by the criteria that we're trying to, but the size from Piccadilly to Peoria is 81,000 people. So that's about 20,000 over what we can have in the council district. I wanted to clear that up.
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for being patient and raising your hands. I really appreciate it and being part of this process. So yes, please. So that I'll repeat the question. The question was, since map B is sponsored by 6 council members, what's the thinking behind the potential of changing that map based on
we're open to hearing from everybody. I mean, that's the process right now. No maps are a set deal. That's why we want to take this input and go back and what if you might have a better idea of how to draw boundaries. So this is the open process. So none of the maps are approved or done yet. We want to take your input.
So map D totally dilutes the voting power of Northeast and North Parkfield. That's not okay. To preserve North and Northeast Parkfield, we would be amenable to map B, map C, and map E. Everything else dilutes the voting power of North and Northeast Parkfield. So I hope you all take that into consideration.
I'll just repeat in case people didn't hear. There's a concern that map D dilutes the voting power of North and Northeast.
All the other maps except map B, map C, and map E. That keeps North and Northeast Parkfield intact. All the other ones dilute the voting power of North and Northeast Parkfield.
Yeah.
I will say that I like map C and map E. They jumped out at me because they seem like they ensure that every council person represents your district. And I think that's important because we're in a society now that tends to try to be more and more segregated. And I think it would be better if every council person needed, but representing the district. And so I hope that you consider is each district diverse. That you have, there's not a council person that's just representing wealthy people and the council person that's just representing poor. Then you have these. Then you have policies that come out that are terrible. That aren't good for everyone. So you need the council people to be concerned about what's happening to both the wealthy and the poor residents in the city, every one of them.
Yes. Because I'm down in Colorado. I like reading because it keeps the
I know that sounds like 99%, but it is important to some of us. But I think that's really important to get.
So keeping CBD and
Lodo
together.
Yeah, so CBD is central business district, downtown, central business.
And I'm gonna go to people who haven't spoken yet, so sir, yep.
So I should really like to echo what you said. We're very interested in looking at a lot on shared interest, shared
Great.
Did you repeat what you said? I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you over here.
It was the same thing.
He echoed the desire to keep central district
Oh.
business district and Bodo together. Yes, ma'am.
Are you Herndon? Is that correct? Okay. And Sawyer?
Sandoval.
Sandoval. And then are there any other council people here? And Sita Baca is not here?
She's on Zoom.
She's out.
She's right here waiting.
Right here.
Oh, she's right there. Okay. That's all my. That's
Okay.
all.
Okay, yes. Actually, do you mind if I go to someone who hasn't spoken yet? Sorry.
So yeah, I would like to echo that A is just a non-starter because it goes against everything the council has set out in its criteria of compactness, of keeping statistical neighborhoods together. It actually breaks up the historic 5 Points neighborhood, and it cuts out 2 districts, 2 precincts within the 5 Points neighborhood and pulls them out as separate. Basically making 2 council districts in a statistical neighborhood that's never been done. And so that was just, that map does not do anything that council has outlined in its process or its guidelines. It meets none of them. I support E. I think that it's very compact. It actually hits all of the actual guidelines that have been set out, both the actual required guidelines and the ones that are also added on by councilors to see. Now, he also hits the least amount of discrepancy as far as population goes. So every district has the least percentage change and has the most equitable distribution of our population throughout this district. And that one hits the map dead on with that. That's the only map that does that.
I know others have been introduced, but I am. I need to go farther or make in East Denver, live in North Side for 4 years in Chapel Park. So I'm here to support the national team. I don't agree with separated cycle. I don't agree with separated cycle. And I'm sure they all don't agree with Chapel Park moving to the District 9 because District 1 is historically North Side and 1 is the North. And we're organized for that. And when people talk about equity, you have to look at these maps. When I look at the map, that map is way back to look at voting in District 1 that they call White Town. No, I live there. And I have to live with these disability and everything else around. So no, I agree with the gentleman there about also support that one. But wherever we separate our neighborhoods, that then it dilutes our voting power as people of color, and I'm not going to support it. That's it.
And recognizing that we have about 10 minutes left, if you have a comment that you feel has sort of been voiced before and you're echoing, let's try and keep comments to distinct comments. So, sir, you have a question?
I'm just wondering what the real high density centers and working class folks. It seems
it seems that we're keeping the rich neighborhoods together in compact. And we're having well look at this, most well-known neighborhoods. Can you repeat what he said?
Yeah. Generally, he's looking for a map that keeps Cap Hill together, and he's not seeing a lot of that. But if that's sort of a high density area that has a strong sense of community, and so that's generally what I've heard. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So, yes, in the tone of not just being, been the founder of diversity and economic equity project. The reason I say that is why I think that's important. Like, everything has to do with what it, and I've also been, talking with over 2019 and 2025, 15 residents across a lot of these issues back in the city. And one of the things I think has been missing from a lot of what I've heard is about organizing, right? As I talk to elders, there's such a history, right, and way of navigation of like voting when we listen to voting, right? Overall, it's about voting, organizing voters, right? Especially when it comes to minority communities. And so where I see the most equitable and the sense of that keeps things together is the mapping, where organizing doesn't have to change a whole lot, right? In terms of what we know historically, and then what we can do innovatively in reaching some of those points. So I think for that reason, I see that as the strongest, and I don't think there's malcontent in any of the maps, right? I know there's been a lot of hard work put in, and a lot of great thinking put into all of the maps. So I won't say anything about that, right? I just see from organizing perspective, which I think ultimately is the most important. E is an elephant. Come to the door.
Sir.
I would actually like to.
Wait, hold on 1 second. It sounds like there's a question, then I'll.
Historical perspective.
Okay. The question that you asked, sorry.
I was just wondering what made that map easier in terms of organizing, like languages, or was it system? Or just wasn't sure.
It was historical.
Yeah, I would actually like to speak in favor of map A. I know that there's been a lot of criticism on that one, but it turns out that all maps, except for 2 of them, have majority white districts. And so when we talk about diluting the Latino vote, that was not done in cynicism. That was due to promote racial justice among, so we don't have a 7 out of 11 majority white vote. So the only 2 maps that are like that are map A and F. What I like about map A, on top of what I just said, is that I'm a CU Denver alum. The CU Denver students are not on Auraria campus alone. They're literal dorms. The Auraria student lots are in the central business district and all around that adjacent area. And so we need to keep Auraria, CBD, and Cap Hill together because that's where the students live. And as we know, students are underrepresented and are key when you go get out the vote. So,
yes, ma'am.
I'm just so I can project and keep this on for a minute. But I asked earlier for the tool to be pulled up, and I would encourage you all to look at the tool because when we're talking about and thank you for sharing that about the majority white districts. When we're talking about that, you're able to isolate the data in this tool and to see that, right? So one of my big concerns with MapD is that it really pushes the top of the population limits in districts 3, 8, 9, and 11. And so these are places where we are already seeing overpopulation. We're already seeing that District 9 specifically is overpopulated, and so I'm concerned about how this creates a difficulty for a council person to represent that number of people. I'm concerned about the risks of overdevelopment. I'm also concerned if you continue to isolate the data in the maps and you look at the Latino vote or the Latino representation, particularly in map D, it really goes down as you look at it between maps A and D. And so I would just hope that folks would take a look at that data piece, as I think it's an important piece. And where's is it Molly or Holly? She's brilliant and she'll help you with it.
Yeah, so Molly works for the GIS department, correct? And she's been, or no, did I get that wrong? Tech services, I'm sorry. She's been instrumental in helping develop the tool that has helped develop the maps.
Yeah, any questions about the online mapping dashboard? I'll say a little bit after. I really do, I want to echo that. I do use it. It'll help you make sense of a lot of the constraints that my customers have to abide by, and also a lot of the changes that you'll see in the city depending on which plan goes through. So it's a really cool tool.
So I just want to note that we are at time, but I think if we can make time for 2-3 more comments, it would be great. Sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a different perspective. Coming from East Colfax, and we're advocating, number one, the East Colfax remain whole, and are glad to see that the majority of maps are doing that. But also been in communication and working closely with other organizations in Northeast Park Hill and Montbello, and believe strongly that pairing Northeast Park Hill with East Colfax with Montbello will pair 3 nest neighborhoods, 3 communities of interest in District 8. And that will give us a stronger ability to advocate, to stop displacement of our communities. Even in the process of this process, we've already been working closely together. And I think there's a lot of potential with what we can do to elevate all of our voices if we work together with those 3 communities. So we aren't taking position on any map, but hope all maps will incorporate that vision.
And so while we take the last couple comments, I did note at the beginning that we have a survey. It's handwritten. I think that's just a little bit more accessible for these meetings. So if you could take a couple minutes before you leave to fill that out, we'll hand it out and just hand it off to one of us who's going to leave the door. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a couple comments. I hope that when you're making these decisions, since you said these are not set in stone, that you think about the fact that communities like nest neighborhoods and communities of interest should be reflected in the same area, but also think about the response that you've gotten here tonight to the fact that people feel excluded from this decision-making process. I realize you're working on a protracted timetable. I understand that. But given that, I think because this decision is going to impact people for a decade, we need to scramble and find some ways of getting feedback based on what is here tonight and what's been said throughout the other sessions into something that people can react to before a vote is held and their die is cast for the next 10 years. So just feedback on that perspective.
We've said this in other meetings, that this is not your only opportunity to weigh in. We're doing this as a group as a whole, but you can email the redistricting website, you can call. Each of you have 3 councilmen. You have your district and you have 2 at-large councilmen. So please reach out to them to share your thoughts on the map. And you're going to see us come together March the 7th, March the 14th. We have to move something out, and then March 29th is public hearing. Give us your feedback on those conversations that we're going to have March 7th, March 14th. If you're not happy with them, let us know.
Just for clarity, Councilman Herndon, I want to understand, will the comments of the sessions be incorporated into the maps by the 7th?
I'm sorry.
Will the comments from all of the
Yes.
sessions be incorporated into the maps by the 7th?
We're going to get a report from GPSF Friday, March 4th.
Okay.
Before our first meeting, March 7th. So we will have all this feedback from the 6th meeting prior to our first meeting as a committee as a whole.
and community members will be able to access that information on the 7th?
I think so. It will be we should be able to have it up on our website where we put all of our ordinances and our bills. It's called Registar. If you have a question, please email redistricting2022@denver.gov and we can send it out.
Thank you.
Is there a survey for this for this entire process? Here might feedback on the accessibility of this information of the maps. I can't hear. I mean, I have a master's degree from Berkeley in public policy, and I work full time and I am raising kids, and I am pretty familiar with politics, and I find this being very inaccessible and information and what factors, what variables were created or used to go ahead and create these maps, and a detailed discussion about the changes and allow for a discussion. It was just felt like this process was entirely registered, and I would like to survey about this process. And then second of all, if you would also like more information about the changes in these maps and a more deeper dive about these changes before this upcoming 7th meeting, Councilwoman Sedabaka said she would facilitate the process for a deeper dive in the changes. And I have some papers if you want to sign up, and we can go ahead and coordinate this a deeper dive into the maps.
Then in terms of your first question, nothing explicit, but please write your thoughts on the back of that. And I would be happy to take a look at that.
And finally, just that Councilwoman Sedabaka has a video that is available if you want to look at it.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I just picked up on it a couple years ago.
So let's see. So that's it, folks. You got to see how this process went down, saw many of the concerns that I have raised consistently about this process and how inaccessible it is and how it doesn't go into the rationale on any of these maps. I would like to call out that there was a comment in there about breaking up neighborhoods that came from my opponent's campaign manager who lost in the last election. And I do strongly encourage you guys to understand that neighborhoods getting broken up will not have walls built up where there is a new city council line. In fact, for example, one of the neighborhoods that came up that you heard me talk about, 5 Points, if that RNO were to be divided amongst 2 council members, and it makes perfect sense why it should be, because there are 2 very different halves of that neighborhood, they would have access to not only 2 separate city council budgets, but also the 2 at-large council budgets. And so they would have essentially 4 people representing their registered neighborhood organization. And in a district that gets cut up, it's probably cut up because it's extra large or very diverse. And so this is not necessarily a bad thing. I challenge you all to please, please, please check out these maps and dive deep into the layers that you can see underneath the proposed districts. The layers matter so much because this, as they said, will affect us for the next decade. If we take away power from marginalized communities right now, the communities who are fighting against displacement, the communities who are fighting for the environment, you name it, those people will be disempowered for the next decade. So please, please check these maps out. Send your emails for support or concerns to redistricting 2022 at denvergov.org. We will, like they said, be posting on the city website the results or concerns and comments throughout this process, and hopefully we'll see some maps change based on the feedback. I have been committed to integrating community feedback and concerns into my map, and if they allow me to change my map, I would happily incorporate these changes to my map. But I look forward to the continued conversation, and as you heard earlier, if we are allowed to change our maps, I will be convening a community meeting where we can workshop these, just like we did when we convened several town halls to identify the communities of interest. So thank you for attending tonight. I appreciate you all. And